Hello, everybody. Look at that fancy new intro we got. I am your host, Jonathan Crow, Director of Community here at NinjaOne, and I have with me the first guest kicking off NinjaOne 9.0 week, Paul Evans, our product manager. Hey, Paul.
Yep. Hey, Jonathan, how's it going?
It's good. Paul has been elusive for us. We have tried to pin down Paul. He is a busy guy. He's traveling tomorrow, in fact, but we got him. We have him here, captive for you all, to berate him, to ask him all these questions. Be gentle on Paul. Like I know you will. It's great to see familiar names. David, Dan, Robert, Matt. Awesome to see you all here. So we are going to be kicking off NinjaOne 9.0 week with focus in on MDM, but not just MDM. We're going to narrow it down even further. We're going to be talking about Mac. And this is something that has been really forthcoming for quite a while. I mean, Paul, you were brought on to really shepherd this project, and you've been hard at work. It's finally seen the light of day. It's out there. Why don't you give folks a little bit of background, and then we can go ahead and dive into some of the things you're going to be showing today.
All right, yeah. Well, as I'm sure most people listening to this webinar know, NinjaOne started as a pure RMM company, largely focused on Windows, but of course, adopting Mac where you can as well. But at least in Apple's world, for reasons that only Apple engineers can understand, an RMM only solution on Mac and Apple devices in general is only viable so far. And so I was brought into NinjaOne a little over a year and a half ago to build out this Apple MDM product. We started with the mobile side last year. And then in the second half of the year, we were building out the desktop side for macOS, which we released last April, so about 2 months ago, give or take. And now we got both out there finally in the real world, and it's a matter of continuing to build on what we've gotten so far.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time to dive in here and show us a little bit about what is new and available in 9.0. I know you have a demo that you want to show, and I just want to encourage everybody here in the chat. Don't be shy. I know you won't be. As Paul is going through things, let us know what your questions are, comments, concerns, questions, curiosities. Paul's going to be going through a demo of some of the immediate things available. And I understand, Paul, you're also going to be showing a few little sneak peeks here at the end.
Not so much showing, but I definitely want to get a heads up of what's coming over the next release or two as well. So once we get to the end of what we have available now in 9.0, I have a hunch I know what some of the top feature requests will be, so I'll try to head some of those off before they come.
Okay, awesome. Appreciate it. So let's go ahead and kick things off. If you want to pull up your screen, I'll bring it on here.
All right, I'll go ahead and share my screen over here.
Awesome.
All right, perfect. Yeah, and so this is just your average NinjaOne 9.0 environment. And I'm going to cheat a little bit because a lot of what I'm going to show today technically released a little bit before NinjaOne 9.0. We had our own special release between 8.0 and 9.0 for primarily just macOS stuff. So I want to make sure that gets its time in the sun here. But I'll go through as well what's specifically going to be new in 9.0 as well. And as Jonathan said, post your questions as I go. If you do want to berate me, feel free as well. But I prefer the questions, so just give me what you got.
All right, perfect. Before you dive in, Paul, this is just really for me. Is there any way you can zoom in a little bit? Just make this a little larger.
Maybe I can.
Okay, there we go.
Better?
I love it.
Perfect.
Cool. Thanks.
Perfect.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so to start with, though, one thing we get into conversations a lot about is what is MDM and how is it different from RMM? And there are some technical aspects I'll get into in a moment, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's something you should worry about too specifically. You should always think of NinjaOne as offering a set of functionality. And to the technician's perspective, it shouldn't really matter. Is this coming from the MDM side or is it coming from the RMM side? Because they should be seamless, they should work together, and they should build on top of each other. On the technical side, though, what MDM really means is it's NinjaOne taking advantage of the native operating system in order to achieve all sorts of different things. So when you think of RMM, there is an agent running on the device that's running scripts, performing actions, and doing things. With MDM, it's actually the NinjaOne server sending commands directly to the device and the device directly responding to it. But the important thing to keep in mind is the RMM agent is still there. It's still doing all of the things it's always done. And everything I'm going to walk through today can be in addition to that. So RMM and MDM work together, and it's just really a better together story. So as I mentioned, in kind of our quote unquote NinjaOne 8.1 release, which was between the last and this current release, we made macOS MDM support generally available. If you've seen or you've tested or you're actively using NinjaOne for Apple mobile devices, iOS or iPadOS, you'll find that the experience is 90% identical. Fortunately, the platforms are very, very close to each other. And so when we talk about adding a Mac to MDM, you essentially have two options. Option one is going to be used for devices that you have in the field already, or for personally owned devices or any devices that are not part of Apple Business Manager already. And adding a device is exactly where you'd expect it to be. This add button, device, computer, Mac, exactly where you'd go to deploy a new agent to these devices. But now you'll have a third option available, MDM enrollment profile. You select that, and you'll have to specify a APNS certificate as well, which is one of the initial setup requirements for using MDM on any Apple device. But once you generate this installer, you're able to download or email or copy a link to what's called the enrollment profile. This is just a little plist file. It's something like a kilobyte big that you install on a device that enrolls that device in MDM. And once that enrollment is done, NinjaOne takes management of that device and everything kind of goes from there. One important point I'll mention as well is that if you enroll a device in NinjaOne MDM, the RMM agent will automatically deploy over the air with all of the permissions and settings and whatnot it might need. So if you are manually deploying the RMM agent today, enrolling in NinjaOne gives you a simple way to even do that. The other onboarding method is typically what you're going to see with corporate-owned devices and devices that are already part of Apple Business Manager. And this is done kind of within the NinjaOne MDM Apple app. And again, if you already have NinjaOne MDM set up for your iOS mobile devices, this is already going to be set up for you. It's the same APNS certificate that's used to allow any management of MDM devices. And then you have this automated device enrollment integration with Apple Business Manager. And this is where you can take those company-owned devices, sync the assets into NinjaOne, and essentially allow for full management of these devices right out of the box. And essentially how it would work is when you turn on a device for the very first time, or you perform a factory reset on the device, the MDM becomes forced on it when you kind of set up that device in the first place. So there's really no way around having that device in a managed state, and you can ensure that NinjaOne has control of it. Even if a user was to wipe it or you were to issue it to another user, it all gets handled automatically and over the air. And then finally, one third piece of integration that we have is what's called the content token for apps and books. This is another integration with Apple Business Manager, but it's useful to deploy any App Store application. Traditionally, our RMM agent exists today, and you can use it to deploy any kind of software installers you have on devices. But with NinjaOne MDM, you also now have the ability to deploy and manage any App Store-based applications as well. And you can see here, we'll show you any apps you sync over from your ABM or Apple School Manager instance, you'll be able to see exactly what platforms those apps support, so you can help distribute them to the appropriate devices. And there's a question, I see there's a handful of questions that I'll get to as I get to the relevant parts of the demos.
Cool.
So no worries. But I see one that just came in regarding ABM versus APNS. APNS, the Apple Push Notification Service Certificate, this is always going to be required no matter what. The automated device enrollment integration, or Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager in general, are not required in every single case. In the mobile world, you're generally always going to require Apple Business Manager for corporate owned devices. And the reason for that is that there's a pretty distinct difference between what an MDM is allowed to do on mobile devices, depending on how the device is enrolled. And for these corporate owned devices, it requires this Apple Business Manager integration in order to get full control over those devices. And in a lot of ways, you might require. In the Mac world, though, that's not entirely the case. If a Mac is MDM enrolled in either of these two methods, your overall functionality is actually going to be the same, even if you don't have Apple Business Manager involved. However, if you are manually installing that enrollment profile, the one caveat is that a local administrator on the device will be able to remove the MDM profile. So there is kind of that escape hatch for a local user. If they do that, it will also remove the corporate settings. So it's not like they'll have access to stuff they wouldn't or they shouldn't be able to without a managed device. But that is something that's always going to be available for a manually enrolled device. So it's just a question of, will your end users be local users or sorry, local admins? Is there a concern about them being able to do that? If not, you might not need ABM at all. If there is, or if you are using corporate mobile devices as well, I would generally recommend you always have Apple Business Manager set up, because on the mobile side, it gives you a lot of additional functionality. So moving over to the devices list view here, once a device is enrolled, and I'm going to zero in on a Mac here, you'll see it looks and feels pretty much like any other device you would expect. There are some additional pieces of information available. You'll see some of the MDM centric information listed here at the bottom, and you'll also have a special MDM device details page that pulls in a lot of the information that we get directly through the MDM channel, including things like available updates. And in Macs in particular, managing OS updates is one of those areas where MDM really shines. But I'll get to that a little bit more in a moment here. You'll also be able to take a number of additional actions that you might not be familiar with on an RMM only device. And they're all going to be listed under the security actions field here. But things like remotely locking the device, remotely wiping the device, resyncing policies, shutting it down. If there ever is a situation where the RMM agent failed to install or failed to deploy or was uninstalled or something along those lines, we can also use MDM to remotely deploy the latest NinjaOne agent out to devices as well. Generally, this will happen automatically upon enrollment, but you always have that in your back pocket if situations arise where that would be useful. From a configuration standpoint, all MDM settings are configured in the exact same Mac policy. So if I just click into the Mac policy on this device, you'll see we have an MDM section here with kind of all of the relevant settings. And again, if you are familiar with Apple Mobile, you'll find that there are a lot of overlap between the look and feel of that platform as well. But things like managing your passcode requirements, all sorts of different device restrictions are available. There's something like 180 between the different platforms. We split it out into different categories to help you find what you need. But things like allowing AirDrop, AirPlay, the native device camera, all sorts of things that you may or may not want your end users to be able to do. It's just a matter of toggling on and off the various settings that you might need. I mentioned deploying applications. This part might be a little bit confusing because we have applications listed here, but you can also deploy applications through scheduled automations if you do have actual package installers. So the way to keep this in mind is that under MDM, the applications you deploy here will be apps that are natively available in the corresponding app store, whereas scheduled automations will continue to be used for any apps where you have an installer package that you're physically deploying down to the device and installing. Jumping through the rest of these real quick, network settings, if you do have specific corporate Wi-Fi or proxy settings, those can be configured here. And then the big one, OS updates. This is something that I know we've been building out in various capacities on the RMM side for quite a while, but I think we really solve in a good way with MDM. Essentially how we can manage macOS updates. And everything I'm saying right here is also going to apply to mobile Apple devices as well. So keep that in mind. Is really it's broken out into two halves. The first half is kind of defining how a device behaves on its own. And so you have settings like delaying when upgrades can be self-installed. And what that means is Apple gives us the ability to delay an upgrade up to 90 days. And so that means if Apple released some new version of macOS today, the device wouldn't even see it for 90 days. So if the end user went into system settings, they would simply see that no updates are available for it. So you can really make sure that end users aren't updating devices on their own. But you can also explicitly enforce specific updates. And this means NinjaOne can push out updates to devices, superseding anything you have already configured here in the policy. And it's a matter of going into add, specifying a appropriate version, and also specifying the enforcement date. And so let me walk through kind of how this would work real quick. Today is July 14th. So let's say I say the enforcement date is July 21 at 9 a.m. local device time. Essentially, what would happen is when I create this enforcement and I save this policy, within moments, the devices would receive it. And end users would be notified that their administrators have approved macOS 15.5, and it will be enforced at this date and time. But what will also happen is the device will automatically download and prepare the update itself. And so once that update is downloaded and prepared, it will become visible to end users, and they will be notified at a time convenient to them to initiate the update. So if they're going out to lunch or it's the end of the day or whatever time of day works for them, they can just press the update button locally, and the approved update will kind of take effect at that point. And if they don't do that, they'll continue to be notified once per day that this update is available. As this enforcement deadline comes closer and closer, if they're still not updating their devices, on that final day, they will be notified more periodically. But if they go past this time, the device will force the update. So the device will restart on its own. There's no way around it. Even if the device is just sitting on the desk, as long as it's plugged in and has enough hard drive space, essentially, it will handle the update. So you always want to just keep in mind your enforcement deadline is sort of your window to use Windows terms there, your enforcement window. So you want to make sure you're not doing it in like the middle of the day when people are actively working, but either the end of the day or the beginning of the day, just to kind of scoop up any stragglers, make sure the updates apply and they get on the version that they're going to get on. But I think you'll find, especially compared to kind of our past implementations of the RMM-based software updates, this works incredibly efficiently and makes it easy to ensure your devices are on the versions they're supposed to be.
Hey, Paul, I have a question there with, first of all, I feel seen with that, users who wait till the last day. But do you have the ability to get more granular with the number of alerts or do any amount of like, I don't know, customization there? Or those things that are strictly controlled by Apple?
Yep, it's all native to the operating system. And so there is no customization for those specific messages right now. But I think if you try it out and see, Apple's done a really good job. This is, I think, their third implementation of native OS update management. And I can tell you from about a decade of experience, the first two were a total hot mess. But this one actually works really, really well in my experience. And I think once you kind of get familiar with the flow, you'll find that it really does what it needs to do in a way that keeps the users happy and also keeps the devices up to date.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Before you go on, I just want to make there's some questions
Yeah.
around. We're managing Mac devices, but in the end, it all comes back to Microsoft, doesn't it? So we got some
Mhm,
questions around
mhm.
that. Do you want to hit those now, or is there a better time to hit those a little bit later?
Give me about 5 minutes, but I see there are, I think, three different questions about Microsoft slash Entra SSO. So I'll get to that in just a couple
Perfect.
minutes here.
Okay, awesome. We'll let you go with your flow.
Yep.
Thanks again, and keep those questions coming, guys.
Yep, perfect. Yeah, so two more things before we get to the SSO topic. I just want to run through privacy preferences and system extensions. If you are personally using a Mac or if you are managing Macs in your environment, you are probably familiar with all of the user-centric permission prompts that come up every time you want to deploy an app. You push out an app to devices that installs, and then you get 37 messages. This app wants to use the desktop. It wants access to accessibility. It wants this or that or whatever other settings. With MDM, we have the ability to essentially pre-approve almost all of those. And I say almost, and I'll get into that exception in a minute here. But essentially, you can go in and for any of your third-party apps you're configuring, depending on what the app requirements are, you can configure what's either called a privacy preferences payload or a system extension. System extensions are typically going to be used with your enterprise level apps, things like antiviruses or network proxies or things along those lines, because they're a mechanism that give those apps access to native OS APIs and an additional level of control that a normal app would get. But privacy preferences are going to be used for your day-to-day apps. So things like access to all files, access to the accessibility APIs, camera, desktop, documents, and kind of so on and so forth. The specifics will depend from app to app, but typically for any app, you'll be able to find some instructions that say, for the example of CrowdStrike, it needs access to all files and app data and maybe one or two other things, just depending on what it might be. And it's just a matter of going in and allowing the appropriate permissions here. One question we get quite a lot is, okay, remote control screen capture permission. Unfortunately, this is one of the exceptions that cannot be explicitly enabled. And you can see here we don't have the ability to allow. That's just essentially not allowed by Apple altogether. But what we can do is allow a standard user to turn on that permission. Typically, it would require an administrative local account to go into system settings and kind of click the approve button, but we can at least make standard users able to do it. So they would still have to go into the settings and click approve. But if they are just your normal end user, it's a matter of giving them that instruction set, open up settings, go to privacy, click approve. So it's a little bit closer to where you want to be. And if Apple ever allows us to explicitly allow screen capture, you can imagine we'll enable that permission on day one. So finally, the last type of payload we have here today is what we call custom payloads. And this kind of gives you access to everything else you might ever need. We are cognizant that there are a lot of other types of settings you may want to manage that we don't have built out into the UX just yet. And custom payloads gives you the ability to provide a mobile config file directly based on Apple's APIs that allow you to configure any of those settings. One other thing it gives you the ability to do is configure essentially any third-party Mac app. Pretty much any enterprise or corporate use case Mac app has the ability to configure it with this type of custom payload. Even things like Chrome browser, Firefox, setting like default home pages and bookmarks and things like that. You'll be pretty surprised what you can find can be customized with this standardized format. So it's definitely something to look into if you do have some of these third-party apps. You can see here things like Firefox. We have a basic example where you can just set the home page. But some of these apps have tens or even hundreds of different settings that could be configured and limited or enabled or customized, just depending on what all of these apps and questions do. So it's a very, very powerful tool for third-party apps, in addition to some of the native macOS and iOS functionality that it has available. And so this is where I'm going to circle back to the question about SSO and local login with third-party IDPs and things like that. It's a little bit of a complicated discussion, but macOS has a native framework called Platform SSO, and it allows an IDP to essentially latch onto that local login screen, if you will. And so the way it works will depend on how the IDP has it implemented. But Apple supports a couple different methods. Method one is a local password sync, where it'll physically sync the local password with the password of the user in the IDP. The second common example is what they call a secure enclave-backed token. And what that does is it doesn't sync the local password itself, but it generates a token tied to that login that's authenticated against the IDP. And it allows SSO into basically anything that IDP has SSO configured to. So the local login itself will still be the same on the device. But let's say you have Entra ID federated with your Office apps and other web apps. Those would automatically be federated into by that token that's generated on login. So it essentially uses that initial local login as the SSO session for anything the user might access. Entra ID in particular supports both of those options. And it can be configured through a custom payload. I'm in the process of building out some documentation of exactly what that looks like. I've tested it myself, though. I've also tested it with Okta, if anybody has Okta as their IDP federated out to all their third-party apps. They also have a platform SSO support with their Okta Verify app. So probably expect in the coming 2 to 3 weeks, maybe we'll get some documentation published specific to platform SSO and setting it up with Okta or Entra ID, but it is possible on both of those. One other neat thing I'll mention is today, one of the limitations is that platform SSO, how do I phrase this? Platform SSO can initially be set up only after the first local account was created. So essentially, the device onboarding process would be you create a local account normally, then Platform SSO gets enabled, and then you can sync that local account with the Platform SSO. And from there, you can also set up the option to dynamically create other local users based on the IDP credentials. So if a second user was to log in with their IDP credentials, it would automatically generate the account. That's an optional setting. But in macOS 26, which is the new version coming out later this fall, Apple's actually announced that the initial local account will also be able to be created through the Platform SSO Federation. So we'll have to wait and see a little bit on exactly how that gets implemented. And I expect it'll take a little bit of time for the IDPs like Microsoft and Okta to actually implement that change. But I would bet either late this year or maybe early next year, the entire onboarding process for Platform SSO gets very, very streamlined, and you can essentially set it up right out of the gate, which is going to be very, very cool. But stay tuned. It's a pretty common topic, but you'll be seeing documentation in the coming weeks specific to Entra ID and Okta. There may be other IDPs that also support it, but those are the two that I've been able to confirm myself.
Awesome. All right. So, do you want to keep on going? There's some other questions, but
yeah, I'll take other questions. I see a handful kind of on that same topic.
Yeah, the one I was going to tee you up for is this one from Connor. So the biggest question I have is, does Ninja for Mac have integration with Microsoft? So beyond just the SSO, are they able to configure it so it's able to be recognized as meeting compliance? initial?
Not today, but this will be coming very, very soon. And this is being built at the platform level. So it won't just be Macs that will be able to kind of set that flag in Intune of being managed and being compliant, but across all of the platform, Windows, Mac, Android, iOS, Linux, will be able to have that integration. It's done with kind of a direct API integration between the NinjaOne infrastructure and the Intune infrastructure, and it is kind of being built as we speak. So you don't have it today, but it will be coming soon, and you will be seeing all sorts of announcements once once that's out.
Yes, yes. So yeah, this goes into the integrations with Intune, and yes, as we like to say in the NinjaOne Discord, soon.
Coming soon, coming soon.
Okay, cool. And then the last one that I have flagged, and anyone else on the in the audience here, let me know if we're missing anything. But yeah, how does MDM work with remote? Is there any kind of direct access there?
Yep. So yeah, so when you enroll a device in MDM, we will automatically set all of the permissions that NinjaOne needs to use. And that applies to both the RMM agent as well as NinjaOne Remote. But that one exception is that screen capture. Apple calls the permission screen capture, but this is what is used to do the actual screen share. This one cannot be enabled automatically, but we do allow a standard user to enable it. So once a device is enrolled in MDM, specifically for the screen capture setting itself, any local user account will be able to go into the settings and enable it, but somebody will unfortunately still have to press the button initially. And you can believe me, I would love to say we can automate it. And if Apple changes the rules one day, we will be. But for now, we live in Apple's world. Oh, cool. So let me jump on to one new aspect that is going to be brand new to 9.0. And whether you're using uh, mobile devices today in MDM, this is going to be new for you as well. But in 9.0, we fully support device level policy overrides for all MDM. So for Mac, for iOS, for Android, you can go into any policy and define whatever device level overrides you need to set. It would work exactly how you would expect it to with any other setting, but just kind of note that previously we only supported policy level overrides and policy level inheritance. But as of 9.0, all of MDM supports local device level overrides. And that applies to things like custom payloads as well, where kind of at a device level, you can deactivate certain payloads or add custom payloads if you are testing something specific on some sort of test device. The other change to expect in 9.0, and this is going to be purely on the Apple side, is we're always going into usually restrictions, but technically it could be any other payload here. And as Apple expands out the settings available, we'll go in and add settings. So a lot of them you'll see sort of a minimum macOS version or a minimum iOS version on when some particular key was added. And recently, Apple's been going very gung ho about various settings related to Apple Intelligence. So in 9.0, there's a handful of newly released keys that you're going to have available in restrictions. And we've also decided there are a whole bunch of these now specific to Apple Intelligence. So we've just given it its own category. So if you were someone who just wanted to disable it altogether, and you wouldn't be the only person uh, who wants to do that, it's just a matter of filtering by Apple Intelligence and turning off all of the relevant settings you see here. And actually, Robert, I like that comment. Yeah, actually, saying using a Mac. When I first joined this company and we had our first on-site with the entire PM team, I was surprised by the number of other PMs who typically are focused on Windows who actually use a Mac personally as well. So there's more of us than you may think. But yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, I think that's kind of what to expect for Apple MDM today. I know I focused this presentation on Mac, 90% of everything I said worked exactly the same way on iOS as well. You'll notice the specific set of restrictions are a little bit different, just kind of based on the differences between the two platforms. But fundamentally, they work, it's the same protocol at the end of the day, so they all work the same way. So let's talk about what's coming next. And I use next a little bit loosely because I'm actually going to be talking about the next couple releases. But I've kind of shown you we can manage iOS, we can manage iPadOS, we can now manage Mac. We can deploy your apps. You can do all of your standard configurations. You can deploy custom payloads to kind of cover the gap of some of the things we don't have available today, as well as third-party app customizations. And of course, we can manage OS updates. One of the biggest things I did not mention, and it's specific to Mac, is managing FileVault encryption. You can use a custom payload today to require FileVault encryption at a basic level. And we have some examples in the dojo of how to do that. But a more common ask is, okay, I do want to enable FileVault, but I also want access to the recovery keys so that if I ever need to access one, I can access that. And so in our next upcoming release after 9.0, after the one that's essentially rolled out now, we're going to support file vault management and key escrow right in the product. So we'll be able to see the key, we'll be able to rotate the key, we'll be able to access the key, and we will audit access to that key. So every time a technician views or modifies or the device reports a change in the key, that will all be audited as well. So if you ever need to kind of access and do some sort of historical report of whoever viewed this key for this particular device, all of that will be visible pretty similarly to how it works in Windows. On the mobile side, in the next release, where we've gotten a lot of requests for being able to manage the device wallpapers. It actually surprised me a little bit when I first joined the company. I wouldn't have expected that to be one of the top feature requests, but sure enough, it was, and it makes sense to respond to it. If you all are looking for that, it's certainly something we want to prioritize. So built into the policy on the mobile side will be the ability to manage the local wallpaper as well as lock screen of the mobile devices. So you can expect those two soon. And then after that, kind of, well, partially with that, but also in the release following that, we're doing what you could sort of think of as a refactor, but it's really kind of expanding the functionality of how our policy syncs occur in general. If you're familiar with Apple's device management and protocol, you may be familiar with what they're calling declarative device management. But it's essentially version 2.0 of their backend MDM protocol. And it grants a lot of additional functionality as well as streamlines a lot of existing process flows. So right now we have this concept of deploying policies and then having the ability to resync policies if ever needed. With declarative, essentially you just tell the device, this is how you're supposed to be set up, and the device will do whatever it needs to do to set itself up that way. So it'll give us a lot of functionality around things like keeping apps updated automatically. If there's scenarios where like an application receives an error or it fails to install or something like that, built-in retry logic will automatically make sure the app will keep trying to install until it eventually does. If there's ever a scenario where a device policy becomes out of sync, like maybe you were applying keys from a iOS version that wasn't applicable to the device in question, but then the device updated or something like that. It'll automatically keep all of those edge cases synced up automatically without ever need to manually sync. So what that all means to say is we'll be adopting declarative device management across our entire policy set in the near future as well. It's that protocol that we're using for managing OS updates today. And it's one of the reasons that it works so smoothly and kind of without manual intervention. So it's going to be a lot of behind the scenes work, but you're going to see a lot of general improvements in the product as well. Again, things like keeping policies synced, keeping apps up to date, retry logic kind of built in natively. So over the next couple releases, that's all going to be coming, and it's going to be a very exciting time. I'm very optimistic that we're new to the MDM ecosystem, but I think we're starting to set a name for ourselves, and we're building a very high quality product, and we'll continue to do so. So with all of that said, coming soon.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, guys, I wanted before we wrap up here, and thank you again, Paul, for all of that. Wanted to give everyone a chance to ask Paul questions. Like I said, you got him captive, and he is elusive. He's very busy traveling around. So here's your chance to ask other questions if there's anything that Paul touched on, you wanted more details on, or you didn't cover. And I guess I also wanted to put a question out to all you watching too. I mean, is there anything that you all need to be adopting NinjaOne MDM Mac management, macOS management, or going into iOS as well? Are there things that you still have questions about or requirements? Obviously, I know a lot of you watching, especially you watching live, are members of the Discord already. But we have a where Paul is very active, and you're able to get firsthand access to talking to each other, early users, and see some sneak peeks with beta signups and things like that. But just wanted to provide another opportunity. Anytime we can hear from you all and get your questions, get your concerns, get what you want, that's something that we're constantly seeking. So let us know. Paul, while we let anyone give anyone a chance to be brave and ask questions, anything else you wanted to touch on before we duck out here?
No, I think I covered everything I wanted, pending any last minute questions. So I will just say I'm cognizant that the vast majority of you managing Macs are probably using some MDM, even if you are using Ninja RMM. So I would say if you do fall in that boat where you have a different MDM, it might just be worth trying it out. I'm very, very interested in any gaps, any reasons one or more of you might not be able to switch to NinjaOne. Are we missing some critical functionality that you need? Is there some sort of usability gap or anything in between? Definitely let me know if there are reasons that might prevent you from using Ninja MDM for your Apple device management, because that's stuff I want to know, and that's stuff I want to make sure we build out to stop those blockers, essentially.
Awesome. Here's a link to the, we actually have a channel in our Discord, a macOS channel in the NinjaOne discussions section. So I'm going to drop a link to that. And we do have questions, Paul. So the other, in addition to Paul and all the amazing folks working on the product team and working behind the scenes that you have access to in the Discord and these streams, your other partner in crime is going to be your account manager, right? And so your account manager is going to be able to enable new features for you, answer questions, let you check them out, and also talk about pricing specifically. I will bring it up though, Paul. I don't know if you have some of this info top of mind or not. So this is, yeah, basically,
so when you get to
is this a separate, let's talk about this a little bit. Like, is this a separate agent? Is this a separate install? Is it a separate line item on the bill? That sort of thing.
So when we get to specific numbers, that is well above my pay grade, and I'll have to deflect to your account manager, our sales team, and somebody who can speak to numbers in any capacity. But as for the license itself, essentially how it works is our historical RMM agent license is exactly the same. That has not changed at all for the RMM only functionality. There is a small add-on to enable MDM as well. So you get both the RMM and the MDM together. So at the end of the day, there's no concept of MDM only or anything like that. The agent comes with MDM because, again, it's a better together story. The MDM provides a lot of stuff. The agent provides a lot of stuff that MDM cannot do, like custom scripting, for example. So our goal is to just provide the broadest set of functionality that will enable you all to do what you need to do.
Great. And then
not related Yeah, sorry, I see dark mode in the new version 10. I cannot speak intelligently to it, but I can say yes, I saw it in a test environment. So take that as you will.
It really, oh my God. No, thank you. Why is so techie serious? This is the question. There should be something like I have to do something every time this is asked or whatever. Like maybe drinking is a little too early in the day for me. But yeah, like it really is coming. And just trust us. We are when this is coming out and this is
Soon.
launching, we are going to do something really fun because your poor eyeballs, you need this. We're working on it. And then Robert's asking where the template library is, which he always asks as well. Everyone should know where the template library is. You go to administration, and oh my gosh, it's one of
Do I even know?
it's one of the key things
There's an
there.
automation library.
If you go to administration and see, that's where all Mark, the PM who is devoted to adding to our out of box scripts, that library continues to grow all the time. So, Robert, we will have another chance to show that on the screen very soon.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's 288 things in there, apparently. That is a lot of templates.
Yeah, it's growing every day. And we're getting lots of great ideas and requests from you all too. I mean, this is another thing. I'm going to mention the Discord again, but there's a script share there. That's awesome. We see people developing things. And that will often translate into, yeah, we should build one that's native, built into Ninja. So keep that coming as well. Okay, cool, everybody. Well, thanks for joining us. Paul, thanks for helping us kick off 9.0 week. This is a great start to it. Appreciate you. Have a good travel day tomorrow.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody. And stay tuned. I dropped the schedule in our Discord. I'll add it to the description here. But tomorrow we are going to be switching over. We're going to have Luke Whitelock, a familiar face, join us, and he's going to be talking all about updates to custom fields and IT asset management. Later in the week, we'll be diving deeper into new improvements to patching with Chris Williams. We'll be talking about SaaS backup, which is exciting and new for us. Dan Myers is going to be joining for that. And then wrapping up the week on Friday, we'll have Gavin Stone coming to join us and talk about enhanced policy conditions and file transfer automations. So lots of cool stuff that we're talking about over the course of the week. And we hope that we'll see you on the next stream. Take care, everybody.